Welcome back to Cooking at Nanook Lodge, and today's lesson is a side dish using some cabbage. It's a great winter vegetable, and it reminds me of a dish I had with some roasted goat in the Middle East. Uses a little bit of date syrup, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then it's got some nuts. They use pistachios. I got some California walnuts that I'm going to use to make a great dish. I've got everything here for the dish. A couple of things I think they probably didn't use in the dish in the Middle East, but I've added it to mine because I think it really enhances the flavor. So I'm going to use just a little bit of red miso. It gives it a umami dish. I made this Thanksgiving dish last year, and it was really cabbage and red miso and a little bit of garlic, and it was so good. So I'm going to add the miso to this mix, which I know they didn't do in the Middle East, but it really makes just brings out a great umami flavor. The orange makes some brightness. As I said, the walnuts, they used pistachios. I didn't want to do that because I have very few pistachios, but I got lots of walnuts. We've got salt and pepper. We've got olive oil that we're going to use to roast the cabbage with, as well as saute the garlic and the shallots. And then we're going to add some breadcrumbs for a little bit of texture on the top. A little balsamic for some acidity with the orange. And then let's talk about the date syrup. I brought some date syrup back with me from the Middle East where they use it a lot. It's very similar to molasses in the way it pours and the way it moves. It doesn't have quite the same flavor. You can order date syrup off of Amazon if you really want to do this, but if you don't, you can use molasses. You could use a little dark corn syrup because it's the sweetness that you want from that as well. And it all comes together beautifully. So you can adapt this with whatever you have at home. Just make sure it's kind of a syrupy sweetness with molasses or dark corn syrup, or go find some date syrup. It's well worth it. Here's our prep for the cabbage. I took the cabbage and cut it into eighths. There are 8 of them on this tray. We're going to roast them there. Got some breadcrumbs. I toasted the walnuts and then I chopped them up. I chopped them up by hand. I didn't run them through the food processor because I didn't want them to all be pulverized. I've got my minced shallot and my minced garlic. We've got the date syrup and the balsamic vinegar. The orange juice. You might have noticed earlier that the orange had no skin on it. I had zested it for a different recipe I was doing and then put it back in the fridge. And that's a great way to use an orange when you just need the zest. Just save the orange and then you can juice it for something else. Salt, pepper, a little bit of olive oil, and here is a tablespoon of our red miso. Then I just take it and rub it a little bit so the miso just sort of goes everywhere. Once the cabbage is starting to soften and get a little bit of char on the end, I take the breadcrumbs, put them right on top of that cabbage, like that. Just distribute the walnut and breadcrumb mixture evenly over all the little pieces of cabbage. There. We're going to pop this back in the oven for another maybe about 5 to 7 minutes and let the breadcrumbs and the walnuts get nice and crunchy on top. Pull it out of the oven, plate it up, and drizzle it with our syrup. Cabbage is done. Look at that. Nice and toasty brown. Beautiful, steaming, nice and soft. Just love this trivet Shelly made for me from the tile from our backsplash, so I don't hurt the new quartz countertop. So from here, we're going to plate it up. You have a couple of options. You can either plate it with your food on a single plate for everybody, or you can plate it family style. We've got our plate of yummy cabbageness, and here's our syrup. And you just kind of drizzle this all over the top. I want it to all just soak in. Get a little bit of that sweet and acid everywhere you go. There we go. We've got our roasted cabbage with walnut and date syrup. Thanks for watching Cooking at Nanook Lodge this week. We're glad you came for the lesson for the roasted cabbage and walnuts.